So welcome back to another Impact Sessions podcast with me, Nick Bramley. I've got a great guest again this week, and my guest is Rachel Hudson. She's Managing Director of a company called YB, which we'll explore shortly. And we're going to explore how she's built a brand, a value set, and some real business momentum as a relatively new Managing Director. So for anyone with aspirations around taking their business forward, this should be a cracking watch and a cracking listen. So no pressure. Welcome, Rachel, to the podcast.
Hello, Nick. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Good. Great to have you on. You've been on a couple of my training sessions on Zoom and with your team and things. And I've always found your contributions really interesting. And I know you've been on quite a journey. And I thought our guests, our podcast listeners certainly would be potentially interested in what that journey looks like. So I guess, shall we start to explore that a little bit, Rachel?
Absolutely fine. Yes, that'd be great.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we're going to explore your journey to becoming an MD. You work in an industrial fixings business, which in itself is unusual from a gender perspective. We're not going to play the gender card a lot, but we are going to explore that a little bit later on. But it's quite a male-orientated and male-dominated sector, I would imagine. But that doesn't seem to have been a barrier to ambition or success. So tell us a little bit about YB, first of all. What does it do? Which sectors do you service and support? And what's your sort of product range?
Okay, so if I may firstly just say that we are now known as YB Fixings, but previously we have been known as Young Black Industrial Stapling Limited. We were a company that was formed in 1979, registered in Scotland, but our actual main base is here in Swindon in Wiltshire. We distribute a number of different types of industrial fastenings, mainly to the timber frame industry, but also to the construction world with the rebar tool that we hold, and also to the light gauge steel frame industry, which is the modular side of construction, which is an up and coming area. We have an employee base of 30 people, 6 of which are out on the road around the UK and Ireland.
So your 6 out on the road are your sort of external account managers, representatives, building relationships, that kind of thing, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. They are the people that are our face to our customers, yeah.
Okay, and your customers are UK-wide and Ireland, or EMEA, or just UK?
UK and Ireland, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Big enough market to go for, I guess, isn't it?
It is, yes, yeah.
Okay, well, you've been in the business since pre-pandemic. It seems we've now got this thing, haven't we, which is a demarcation of pre-pandemic, pandemic, post-pandemic, and so you've been in there since before the pandemic. But and whilst we're through the worst of it, it's been a challenging couple of years for anyone. How's things at the moment in terms of things like supply chain, raw materials? Are you still having ongoing challenges that were created by the pandemic?
To be honest, no, we've been very lucky. Our purchasing manager actually forward ordered, quite well in advance. So where we see a lot of our competitors running out of stock and not being able to fulfill orders, we've got to get plenty of stock on board. And we only really suffered from the COVID side when the government shut down construction right early on in the pandemic situation. And then, since we've all reopened again, business has gradually got better and better and better. The only thing I would say actually affects us, which is part of COVID, is the cost of freight and the cost of steel, because as you can imagine, fixings are mainly steel based. So as soon as that starts rocketing, our costs start rocketing up as well.
It's really hard to plan for that as well, isn't it? Because we don't know where the end of that is. We don't know where the top of the peak is going to be, and like you say, fuel costs as well. You're shipping stuff around, so you've got transport costs, you've got raw material costs, but at least you've got the raw material and stock available, which has kept you trading. And I suspect that I know actually the construction industry opened back up quite quickly, heavily regulated in terms of on-site COVID restrictions and social distancing and the likes, but actually, you won't have had much of a break in trading then, will you, during that those early days that some people didn't recover from that because it was too long for them?
No, absolutely. We were very lucky. It was only really, it was half of March 2020, April and May, and then it was like the back end of May that we really started coming back.
Yeah.
So it was only literally a couple of months for us. As soon as the factory started opening up back, again, and guys were back on site, then we were up and running again.
Yeah, because they're building stuff and they need your fixings, don't they? So
absolutely,
ultimately, yeah, happy days for you at YV Fixes and Rach. Yeah, okay. So if you haven't got challenges that a lot of businesses have got with supply chain and that kind of stuff, what keeps you busy and occupied most days, and what's your biggest challenge on a day-to-day basis, Rachel, as a relatively new MD, which we're going to explore in a minute?
Okay, so as myself, what keeps me busy, I would say, are people. It's because we've been through such a large transition in the last 18 months or so. It's taken a little bit of time for people to get used to, me as MD, and the new pathway forward. So it is about making sure people feel, kind of settled and valued and things like that. And it's just reassuring the people that are here, because, we've had a few redundancies along the way. And again, as everybody will know, redundancies do shake up a company. No matter how much you try to, tell people it's for the good of the business, it still has that shake up and an ongoing effect. So it is mainly people that take up my time.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, from an MD's point of view, that's it's a welcome response, to be fair, because with 30 people, you've got a lot of responsibilities, haven't you? A lot of mouths to feed, a lot of expectations, and we'll explore now how that role came about, because you come from a very different role, don't you? You come from a financial controller role. I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile, and it sort of says you started in the business as a financial controller in August 2019, and then through a series of things which we'll explore in a second, took on an interim MD role in May 2021, and then taken on the full-time role of MD in October 2021. So it's been quite a journey over about 2 years, and at quite some pace, really. Culturally, are you very different to what was in place before then? Because that's the thing that people sometimes struggle with, don't they? Because culture takes time, and it's not an easy win for the MD. So is the cultural bit that you're trying to achieve the bit that's caused a little bit of sort of concern, or what's it been like for the transition for you?
So, okay, if I just go back to the point of my background, as you say, yes, so I started in the business as financial controller in August 2019. And then, as we all know, COVID hit in the March 2020. The previous MD always had a plan to retire, and we were interviewing different candidates, and then COVID hit, and we then kind of had a conversation of, how we're going to continue with this recruitment plan. And then we came to a decision that, why not look at me? Why, as someone new into the business, getting to learn the business, it would be a good stepping stone for my progress. So then we came up with a plan, and then, as I say, COVID hit, and obviously the plan goes out the window, and then the plan just didn't come about. And then the old MD then left the business last year, and then I took on the role as you say, interim MD. But in the meantime, I was also finance director as well. My career path literally rocketed within months, and wasn't expected from my point of view. But it's ended up being a great plan that's come about eventually. So yeah, we do have a bit of culture change that needs to be kind of looked at and again changed and developed, but that's not something you can do overnight. That does take time and investment, not just by me or the business, but by the employees as well, because they're the people that are going to make that change. I'm here to lead that, but it's all about everybody else taking part in that. So previously, the MD was kind of quite autocratic, let's say, whereas I'm kind of a more modern MD, I'd like to say, and open to listen to people's opinions and where, what they would like to do in their career as well. And if I can help other people along that pathway, then great.
There'll be a lot of skills in the business as well, won't there, with a mature workforce, some of which have been there a long time, and sometimes about getting the best out of them and creating an environment where they can sort of re-energize themselves in some respects. And, coming from a finance background, what I would say is some of that takes money and investment. Is there a clash between financial prudence and developing sort of the pathways, if you like, for your team to thrive? Because the two could clash, couldn't they, potentially?
Yeah, they could. Yeah. I wouldn't say the culture change, as I say, is kind of like little stepping stones. So from a business point of view, although I've invested in making that change, I haven't gone out and, kind of engaged with a company that helps with culture change. I haven't done that. I've decided, typical Rachel kind of thing, I've actually decided to do it myself in a funny kind of way, because I see it in the fact of, I came into the business as an employee, and now I'm kind of the employer. So I get both sides of where YB sit.
Yeah.
So although I've invested time, but not that much money. So like one of the starting points was, the rebrand. And also just recently, just last week, in fact, we finished a refurb in the offices. So our offices, our environment now feels modern, whereas previously it was probably a 1980s kind of feel.
Yeah, I've got a feeling, I've not been to your place, but I've got a feeling of, the traditional sort of office environment, little squirrely sort of places and little sort of side rooms and all that kind of thing, but and a bit dark and whatever. And culturally, people come to work and that's what they're working sometimes in an industrial environment, but it doesn't have to be that way, does it? We'll explore the rebrand in a minute. Let's stick to the financial background. So I'm interested as an MD, and we've called this about, building business momentum, brand and value set. From a strong financial background, the MD role often comes from that, but it also comes from sales and marketing, operations, wherever it might be. How have you found your background in terms of hitting the floor running then from a financial point of view? Has it been an advantage? Has it been a limitation based on the fact that you've only worked in the financial part of businesses before? How's it been for you in terms of your transition into the MD role, Rachel, do you think?
To be honest, I think it's gone quite well, hand in hand, really, because like you say, it's almost like a salesperson coming into an MD would purely be about turnover, and it's all about selling to the customers, but I'm more about the bigger picture. And because of having done the management accounts previously, I know what it looks like. I know what our targets are, probably better than a sales guy coming in and being an MD. So it kind of gives me an all-round kind of picture. What I really rely on is my sales director, because, and again, he's kind of stepped newish into his role, probably 6 months prior to myself, although we've been in the business a long time. So I heavily rely on him. And again, that's kind of key for me because I'm empowering him to support me. And it's like, I'd much rather kind of empower him and rely on him than knowing little bits about a lot.
Well, you don't need to be a sales director, do you? At the end of the day, you've got a sales director. You need to know what the sales director's responsibilities are and expectations on that role. But I really liked, and I'm glad we're exploring this. I really liked what I'd seen on various calls previously. You don't seem like that micromanager type of autocratic sort of leader, as you say. You sort of seem much more modern than that, and I think the fact that the business is going to be run prudently and fiscally sort of well is a good starting point, because without that, it's all built on shifting sands if you're not careful, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm intrigued then, because one of the early moves you made as MD was a rebrand. I mean, talk about brave and talk about sort of, you know, big. If you can do something, Rachel, what we'll do is we'll rebrand the business. That's not, well, first of all, it can be quite expensive. Secondly, it can be all encompassing. And thirdly, potentially, it can be a bit of a nightmare, can't it? The whole thing. First of all, why did you do that from Young Black to YB Fixings? Why? What was the thinking behind that? And secondly, what was the rebrand in terms of everything, and how's it gone? Talk us through the rebrand. First of all, why would that be one of your earliest moves? I was fascinated when you did that, coming particularly from the background. If you were a marketing director who'd taken the MD's role, I could totally understand. But from being a financial control person to doing a rebrand, it was quite an unusual and brave challenge.
No, you're right, Nick. It was quite brave. In today's world, if you were to go on to a search engine and type in Young Black, you can imagine the sort of things that would come up.
Hang on. Let's just stop for a minute and let the audience, let that permeate a little bit. Yeah, that's going to take you to some different places that you don't want to buy industrial fixings and staplings from, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it was an area of the internet that I, as a new MD, did not want to be associated with.
That seems fair.
So yes, back in the day, that would have been fine, but in today's world, it just didn't work. And so I then took the decision. You know, a lot of people called us YB anyway. I didn't want to get rid of the heritage that came with the business, and I wanted to keep that. And I thought that was also key from a company kind of journey. It was important to keep that history there. And so we kind of, you know, talked it over as a management team, and came up with YB Fixings. And then, yeah, just decided to launch the rebrand at the end of January in 2022, this year.
Yeah.
And it's just gone from strength to strength. Our old website wasn't user friendly, to say the least.
Yeah. I think from memory it looked like sort of a Windows 97 version of a 1995 website, did it not? And that's not being unkind, but that's kind of, if anyone's listening or watching, just visualize that, and it was that kind of, you know, feel about it, wasn't it?
It was very much so. It was almost like, you know, there was no scroll ability on most of the pages. It was just what you saw on the screen was it. And yeah, it didn't promote us as a business at all. And so, yeah, we launched the new website at the end of January, which is now a lot more hip and trendy, and, you know, a lot more user friendly with different clicks. It's still, you know, still in development. It's not the final thing. But, you know, it's given a better picture, better image for our customers and suppliers of what we are and who we are.
And it works on mobile and tablet devices, which they need to do these days. The other one probably didn't do that. And also when people are searching for YB, they're not being taken to places on the internet that they don't necessarily want to be, and then being embarrassed and awkward about the whole sort of situation. So, you know, that is a fair point that is often overlooked, isn't it, when people choose? I mean, obviously you only work UK and Ireland, but you hear stories of people choosing a business name and the working internationally, and it means something, you know, really quite nasty in Greece or, you know, Thailand or something, you know. So you've got to be very careful, haven't you, about where your brand sits and where you fit, really. Okay, so so how much was bringing the brand into the 21st century and the driving force behind that part of the whole thing around culture change as well? You ran them together, did you? Was it all part of a journey internally and externally?
It was indeed, yeah. And that's also part of, you know, the redecoration that we've had recently in the building as well. So, you know, again, it's almost like if you're going to change that culture, you need to change everything. It's not just about how the people work and how the people think. If those people are still in the old situation, the old environment, they're going to mentally still think in the same way. So it was almost like get a new presence out there, get a new environment to work in, kind of, you know, all updated. And then all of a sudden, the old Young Black industrial stapling is a thing of the past.
Yeah.
And now everybody is now YB Fixins. And it did take a little bit of time, you know, for the ladies answering the phone to remember that they're YB Fixins and not Young Black. And as it does with the reps out on the road as well. But it was a big thing about let's do it all together. And when we launched the website, we launched it at midday. Everybody that was in Swindon were here. We all, you know, pressed the button at the same time and opened a bottle of bubbly and, you know, did the cheers sort of thing. And it was a real celebration time. And again, that was important to have the team on board during that process to make them aware of how big this was. You know, we've been known as Young Black since 1979. Now all of a sudden we're changing, but it's been received so well. And I kind of feel that, you know, although that's my stamp on the business, I kind of feel a little bit disappointed that the old MDs weren't around to see that. And kind of embrace that change. But, you know, it's my stamp on the business. Everyone has their own stamp. So, and this one was mine. It was quite a big one.
you certainly stamped it early and hard, didn't you? So, you know, that's you can certainly feel the sort of Rachel Hudson influence on that. And I would say to you, you know, having seen the previous incarnation and the new one, you know, great work. And like I said, it's a work in progress. These things always are. In terms of sitting that alongside where you're taking people on the journey and that kind of stuff, you seem to be values based as well as a business, you know, in terms of having some strong personal values that you want to bring to the team and then bring those values into the business. Are you doing any specific work on values and linking those values to the brand? How's that working alongside your branding?
So in the old days, pre-YB, we as a business, we had a mission statement that not many of us knew. Definitely didn't have any company values or, you know, a plan of what we're about. But so again, that's part of the cultural change. We are working on it, but like I said earlier, things do take time. And we've started with a company that's I've worked with, you know, from my day one as MD, and they're on board. We're doing things like, you know, 360 assessments with certain, you know, key members of the management team and of all of the employees as well. And from that, we will slowly build the picture and we'll come to a conclusion just naturally of what our values are and kind of come up with those, you know, 4 or 5 statements that is YB Fixins.
And I think that's important. A lot of people think that's fluff and nonsense, don't they? You know, it's like, but I think in 2022 and beyond, a lot of businesses are looking for a value match, aren't they? They're looking for organizations that look like them, think like them, feel like them, you know, as part of the supply chain and customer experience. So, you know, I think it's great to see the emphasis on that and the fact that you understand the impact it can make, and that and what I really like about that is that you'll get there without forcing it, because there's so many businesses. I've worked with organizations where they've got values on the wall, and if you ask someone to close their eyes and say what are the values of the business, they couldn't recite them. You know, I think there's one about so and so. Integrity's up there somewhere. You know, it's like they're not really values if they're not embedded and they're not part of the culture of the organization. So that's great to see. And none of this sounds like you're a finance person, by the way, Rachel, which is brilliant. I'm not knocking finance people, but, you know, you're very well rounded for someone who's come from a very disciplined role, aren't you?
I am, yes. And I don't know, I don't like to conform. If anybody out there knows me, they know I like to be different. I've never conformed to the stereotypical picture of an accountant. I've always branched into other areas of the business. And I guess that's probably where now all of that experience now comes on board. And I think, you know, the guys here kind of appreciate my background because, like I say, it wasn't that long ago. I hate to say it, but I was one of them.
Yeah.
I mean,
you sat next to them. You sat next to them in the office. Dingy as it might have been, but you were sat next to them in the dingy office, and putting your shift in, weren't you?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's like I say, it wasn't that long ago. I was one of them, and I am still one of them. Okay, I've got the title of managing director, but every morning I still make everybody in the office a cup of tea.
Wow. If they're all in early at 30, that's a hell of a round, isn't it? That in terms of 30. I saw one of my clients recently have got on their wall, they've got a colour chart for exactly which colour tea you want. And I found that fascinating. And they've all got nicknames. And mine is the second darkest tea. And it's called You Must Be Joking. It's like almost like, and so it's like, who's drinking tea? That mine's like oxtail soup, and other people drink it like Horlicks. So it's quite a pressure making around the tea in an office, isn't it, really, Rachel?
It is. I have to admit, it's only for the guys in the office, because doing it downstairs with the guys in the workshop and the warehouse, that would be a big feat, definitely.
That would be. You'd need a big tray, wouldn't you, for that? Okay. One thing worth exploring, and I've had a few of the Indutrade family businesses on here, and you're another Indutrade business, which is part of an umbrella organisation that develops and helps and supports you as YB Fixings. One of the things I love about Indutrade and their sort of family businesses is this access that they give you to support, training, and other development sort of tools. You've been very active on putting your team onto all sorts of things, haven't you? I run things as various programs run by other people within the Indutrade family. How important has it been to you to invest in that training and development, and how people reacted if they haven't been on that before? Because I hadn't seen many YB or young black people previously, and now suddenly I'm seeing lots of YB people on things. That's quite a change for them. How's that been received then, and why have you done that?
The reason I've done that is to encourage the employees and to help build the employees within the business. Just because you come to work doesn't mean that's it. You're here to do a job and that's it. I'm here forever doing this job. It's not about that. It's about making sure that these guys are, encouraged to learn more and encouraged to develop. And then from there, who knows what the future may bring. And you're right. Yeah, I mean, previously they weren't on courses, but it's something, again, I think it's very important to keep, in a funny kind of way, keep the grey matter ticking over.
Yeah.
Because we all know what it's like. If you do the same job day in, day out, you end up kind of just doing it as a routine. If you go on these little courses, and obviously some of them are like, a 2-hour session.
Yeah.
There's going on this morning. And it's just a little bit of just a break away from the norm. And then all of a sudden you might come back into your daily job and think, oh, hold on a minute. I've just learned about that. Oh, I could implement that. And all of a sudden, there's an improvement within the business. Even if it's something about communication and the way you communicate with people, or the way people react to you, and all of a sudden you then think outside of the box because of something that you've learned. So I am about empowering people and making them develop themselves.
And are they up for it collectively? I've had nothing but positive experience of the teams that you've put on various things that I've run. They seem to be invested in themselves. I mean, you'll get the odd one digging the heels in going, what do I need to know this for, I guess. Have you had to go through a little bit of that to drag some people kicking and screaming?
I wouldn't say kicking and screaming, but I have had the odd comment of, why do I need to learn about that? But then after that session, they would come back to me and say, oh, actually, that was really worthwhile.
Yeah.
And again, it's the culture thing of them kind of thinking that they don't have to sit there and do that job. They can make changes and they can go away and learn and then come back and, implement those changes. And I think that's what's really key. Although some of the guys have kind of been, and it has been a very few number, that, oh, why do I need to go on that? What's the point? Or someone maybe have said to me, oh, I've been on that a couple of years ago and nothing came of it. Whereas now you see people are learning that they'll go away, learn, come back, make suggestions. I'm open to suggestions.
Because that's the other thing. If they were learning previously, there might not have been an environment for those suggestions to have been either listened to or implemented. So that really makes that a self-fulfilling prophecy of a waste of time, doesn't it? And I can see why people do that. But they're getting a different response from you, aren't they?
They are indeed, yeah. As I say, just any small little improvement, I'm happy to listen to that, and might not be.
It's a phrase I like to use a lot, particularly with people. I do a lot of work around sales teams and stuff, and I get people saying, oh, this guy or this lady's got 15 years experience. And I'll say, is it 15 years experience or is it 1 year of experience repeated 15 times? And if you're never learning, you're doing the same thing you were doing 15 years ago. You're not actually developing, and the world has moved around you. So, constantly evaluating opportunities to do a 2-hour this and a half a day that and a webinar here can just keep things fresh, can't they?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, one key thing with Indutrade and, and the businesses are kind of getting on top of this as well is sustainability. And people always think sustainability is just about recycling. And I sent 2 of my RSMs, I gave them the title of YB Sustainability Ambassadors.
Right.
And I send them on the sustainability training from Indutrade. And they came away from that and they're like, and so now they then feed that down throughout the business with regular meetings and email updates and things like that, because it isn't all about recycling.
It's not just separating your cardboard from your tins, is it, Rachel?
It's not. I mean, again, one big step that we took as a business, we decided to replace all of our diesel cars with hybrid.
Yeah.
And so they're plug-in hybrids, and then that's what our sales reps are out there driving now. So,
yeah. Good stuff. I'm glad they're not just electric only, because they'd be stuck in the middle of Norfolk with no charging points and things. And don't get me on the electric car. I'm not sure whether the infrastructure is quite there yet, but that might be controversial for the audience. I might get picked up on it, but I'm not sure. The hybrid's a good stepping stone, isn't it, really, for that? Yeah.
It is, yeah. It was kind of, a halfway, because I was of the same opinion. We're not quite there, especially for, a sales guy or girl going out there, driving around. Not all businesses are set up with chargers at the moment. And yeah, we weren't quite there, but hybrid was a very good stepping stone.
Norfolk, Southwest and Scotland will be a bit of a challenge, wouldn't they, for electric vehicles potentially, but we'll leave it on that. Okay. I can't ignore the gender question. And I'm going to say this to the audience before someone calls me a dinosaur and says I wouldn't ask a man this question, okay? But you've discussed this with me privately off air, so I want to explore it. I'm not being like, oh, why are you a woman and whatever. Not that at all. But you are indeed a woman leading a successful industrial fixings business. That's quite unusual, isn't it, I would imagine. How has it been in terms of positive, negative, challenging? How have you found people reacting to that? Because you will be one of a small handful of MDs operating in an industrial environment. And therefore, by the very nature of that, it's unusual, or it's not unique, but it's unusual. How have you been responded to in that role, Rachel?
It was one of my concerns, I've got to admit. Like you say, it's a very male-dominated industry. And it was just, I guess it's just in my personality. I was very much, no, I can do this. I am just as good as any man out there. Just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I can't do this. And there's plenty of, women that are very successful in leading businesses out there. And I'm sure there are in the, in our industry. But it was a little bit of a concern, but I just embraced that. And I was like, no, bring it on as such.
At the end of the day, it's the MD role. You're not going up chimneys or down mines or whatever it might be. Doing heavy industry, which might be more gender challenging in terms of sending you down a mine or sending you up a chimney. I don't know if we still do that anymore. But the MD role is a rounded person's role. It doesn't matter what gender you are, does it? No, it doesn't at all. It doesn't. What I would say is, initially, I think maybe the other male MDs in the industry will probably be a bit, some woman, what does she know? But I soon put them right, because that's the sort of person that I am. Now, if I was a shrinking violet, it might have been a different story. Yeah. But people out there that know me, I'm no shrinking violet. No, I suspect, I know you reasonably well enough through various things, but I don't know you that well. But you don't strike me as a shrinking violet, Rachel. No. And the thing is, as well, I think, if anything, I've probably gained more respect from the other male MDs and, across the board in the industry because of being a woman and because of my finance background. Because I think people are more shocked about my finance background than they are about me being a woman. Okay. Well, I mean, to be fair, you can hide that one, can't you? You can't hide being a woman, but you can hide the fact you come from a finance background if you really need to, but that's okay. I could have called this episode Getting Your Hands Dirty is a Gender Agnostic Choice, but I thought it might be a bit too heavy and highbrow for the audience. So, but there's still a percentage of people that you have to convince then, is there?
Yes, I'd say so. Yeah. As I say, that some of probably the smaller companies that are probably not so much out there in the industry. The larger companies are totally fine, but it's probably the little smaller ones that are a bit like, oh, you've got a female MD. And sometimes the look on people's faces when you meet them face to face, or even over Teams and things like that, they're very much, oh, wasn't expecting that. And then, it's just about embracing the 21st century.
You work in the construction industry, and I've got lots of clients in and around the construction sector, and they're making massive strides, aren't they, in terms of gender equality, and they're making massive strides in terms of equal apprenticeships and female senior engineers and female sort of senior project directors and all that kind of thing. I know loads of people who are very successful in the construction industry, and the construction industry themselves are embracing even more of that. So I guess the bigger companies, it'd just be like, so what, wouldn't it really, in that respect? It's maybe the old young black type companies who would look at you in a sort of slightly strange, prove yourself kind of way, I guess. But they're getting to be few and far between, aren't they, you would hope?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So you've had a lot of momentum. Last couple of years have been interesting and momentous, I would say, in equal measure. So what's next for you, and what's next for YB? You mentioned about the brand being sort of an ongoing thing, but what's next for you, and what's your next challenge that you're facing in the sort of 2022 onwards?
So we have just recruited a new head of operations. They will be joining the business at the end of May. And again, that's a role that we've not really had in the business before. So that person's going to come on board and help, streamline processes and things like that. We've got a recruitment drive going on in the sales department as well. We've got a recruitment drive going on in our workshop. So we are a growing company when it comes to number of employees. And we're going to we've got lots of exhibitions going on this year for us, attending and displaying, as well as attending and learning and meeting new suppliers and things like that. So it's an ever evolving business, and that's what I love about being MD of YB, is the possibilities. For me, I just think they're endless.
Well, I think a couple of things to pick up on there. It's great that exhibitions are back, isn't it? The energy of them, they've been so badly missed, haven't they? One of the things that one of my clients said to me in May 2020, I said, how do you generate your business? He said, we do 2 big exhibitions a year, one in Dubai and one in Frankfurt. And this was at the height of the lockdown. I said, how's that going to work out for you? He said, yeah, and we had to think of other ways of doing it. But they've been sadly missed, and particularly in industry as well, because a lot of exhibitions, generalist exhibitions, are a bit dull, really. You've got a florist next to a solicitor next to somebody else. I'm not a big fan of those, but for industry specific, for sharing knowledge, meeting the supply chain, they are excellent, aren't they? And it's good to see that you're out there investing in that and getting back out there. And you've got a really experienced team of regional sales professionals, haven't you, who can take advantage of that. But the other thing I liked is you've got a recruitment drive here, you've got a recruitment drive there, you've got a recruitment drive elsewhere, you've got a new head of operations or director of operations. People want to join successful businesses, Rachel. People want to be part of something, don't they? And that feels like it's got genuine momentum. So are you confident that you'll fill those vacancies, in terms of the local area? Have you got a good pool to pull from in the sort of Wiltshire area, and people will want to come to work for you and drive the business forward?
Yeah, and I think, the rebrand is also part of that excitement, in the fact that, they can see it changing. Okay, we are well established, as I say, since 1979, so we're not going anywhere. And it's only going to be better and bigger going forward. And yeah, the excitement of the head of operations coming in, that we had 4 very good candidates. And it was just, I think that's a sign as well, the fact that, because they can see those changes coming through, they were like, oh, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely, it is an exciting time to be part of YB.
Brilliant. Well, a lot of that's down to you, and you modestly not want to take all the credit for that, but I'll offer all that credit over the podcast, and please take it, because if people are listening, it's not you saying it, it's me. So by reflection, you've been a fantastic guest. We've explored there, looking at your role. We're looking at building the brand and rebranding. We've talked about values and the importance of culture, and we've talked about building that business momentum. And it only seems to me like you're on the edge of continued growth and development, and that's great to see. So, I think we should have many more stories of this, because the world's full of doom and gloom, isn't it? And the stories of success sometimes get sort of hidden a little bit, don't they? And in reality, there's lots of businesses doing great things, but you're certainly one of those, Rachel. And then, credit to you in the role, and long may it continue.
Thank you very much. I mean, you're right. With COVID and everything like that, it's been very much doom and gloom. Some companies haven't survived. We are one of the lucky ones. And yeah, like I say, it's just going to get bigger and better. You will see us out there on social media a lot more. We've got a new TikTok page that we launched last week.
Hark at you with your TikTok page. Look at you.
That's what I mean. 21st century company, definitely. And so, yeah, we will be out and about, hear them everywhere. Just from the most, extraordinary place, you will see YB in a year or so. We will be there wherever you look.
Wherever we look, you're omnipresent. That's brilliant. Well, listen, I'm going to finish with the screen share so people know a bit more about the podcast. Regular listeners and viewers know they can click through to the website for IMPACTUS Group and pick up the podcast there. It's also available on the website through all the platforms: iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, YouTube, etc., etc. So there's no reason for not. If you'd like to like and subscribe, if you subscribe, you'll get your regular episodes sent directly to whichever platform you prefer. And finally, just on screen, for those who are watching on YouTube or on the website, are Rachel's contact details. For those who listen, which most people do, I'll put those in the notes for the show. And then Rachel's contact details are there if you want to speak to her. And, you might get asked to be a bit of a role model for the construction industry, Rachel. You never know. There's lots of people in the construction industry looking for, role models to speak at events and stuff. And I think you'd be a fantastic addition to that sort of circle of people. But, don't rule things out. It's great for PR. So once again, Rachel, thank you for being a fantastic guest. Really enjoyed that. And we'll catch up at a future Indutrade and YB event very soon.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Nick. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
Thanks.